There's a press conference happening. There are coaching. Look, I can't do it. I tried to be all serious because I didn't want you guys to make fun of me. It's the Super Bowl, and that means it's time for inside coverage. Welcome to Inside Coverage, part of the Zero Blitz family, presented by Prime. I am Jason Fitz.
He is Jason Fitz.
They've been making fun of the way I talk for a minute. She's Jori Epstein. He's Charles Robinson. Yeah, go ahead. I got it on my system. Is that you want to do it again?
No, we're good.
You need some rhymes. You need some bad puns.
You also you already have too deep manly a voice. I sound like a child. So you got to be a little bit more, it's like...
I look like a child.
Well, this is the riveting content you can only get on Inside Coverage at the Super Bowl, no less. Look behind us. You see what's going on. I say that. I can't see the shot, so I don't really know if you can see it. But we are live as we tape this at Radio Row inside Vegas in the Super Bowl, obviously having a good time. But here to cover the game, which you two are doing beautifully, and we're going to get into all of that. But most importantly, we are in Vegas. So anything, C-Rob, anything get weird?
Actually, you know what? My cab ride in, I started talking to this guy and I asked him how long he'd been here. He told me he had moved to Vegas from China, and he asked if I was in town for the Super Bowl. I said, yeah. And somehow he got the impression that I was here to play in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So as he dropped me off,
you are.
He gets out and he takes the luggage out or whatever. And he's asking me to take a picture. So I left him a huge tip to further the
so now he's going to tell everybody that.
Well, we should make sure we get our picture while we still can.
But, this is the first time we've met in person, and you are alarmingly tall. I will tell you, somebody, one of my friends here that this is what happens. We're all on Zoom most of the time. We don't really see each other in person. One of my friends here earlier today looked at me and said, "Hey, I'm going to pay you a compliment. You're taller than I expected you to be. You're not tall, but you're taller than I expected you. I think people think I'm going to be 5'3". I don't know what I expected, but you're at least 6'7".
Oh, yeah, 6'7". Is that what it is?
I have no concept of height. But you are, how tall are you?
Dang.
See?
You're over a foot taller than me.
Wait, how tall are you?
5'3". Going back to they thought I was going to be 5'3".
This is, again, the riveting coverage you're only going to get on the Inside Coverage. Anything weird? Jory, have you even left your room?
Okay, yes, I went for a run. But
on the strip? Did you run on the strip?
No, but that's tomorrow. Okay, so last night I was Ubering back from dinner, and the guy starts talking to me. He's like, "Have you seen the sphere?" And I still don't really know what that is. And he's like, "Should we go look at it?" And I'm like, "Where is this guy taking me?" I'm like, "Is it on the way?" He was like, "No," but and I really thought we were going.
How could you not know that by now?
Yeah,
right. I know you have social media. When they broke that thing out, it was everywhere in social media. How could you have missed it?
Vaguely familiar.
Oh my God. So, okay, take us to you being abducted.
Right. I was like, I think we can go back. He was like, "Oh, you can't even see it from here." But I was very concerned of where is this guy taking me? And he didn't have a real license plate. It was just a temporary one with a different.
Jory, I say this all the time. The one life rule. If you would see it in a horror movie and say, "Don't do that," don't do it. That's my one life rule.
That's what this entire week is. That's how I felt when I got to Las Vegas. And I was like, we're here for 8 days.
Yeah, the number of my friends that
horror
were like,
movie.
"Hey, pace yourself." That tells you, you just have to. You have to pace yourself here a little bit. That is fair. You guys are both covering each of the respective teams. Which, by the way, make sure you're checking out all the great content on the Yahoo Sports app because we've got so much going on there. But I do want to stick with Vegas for a second. I'll be a homer, being from here. An incredible moment for this city.
Are you staying at home?
No, I don't have any family left here. So,
you don't live here anymore.
But I think for me as a kid, just imagining that the Super Bowl would ever be here it's a strange concept to see this moment. But I think truly what the NFL has done, intentionally or not, is legitimize Las Vegas. You can put a football team here, that's one thing. But when you put the largest North American sporting event here and you make it the focal point of the entire sports universe, I genuinely believe that this is a moment where the NFL has changed the way Vegas will be seen forever.
Well, Goodell doing the press conference in the Raiders locker room in Las Vegas was so surreal. I sat there, because you think about Al Davis and Pete Rozelle and the years of acrimony, the lawsuits. How far has this relationship come that now the commissioner of the league is actually holding his press conference in the Raiders locker room in Las Vegas of all places? Think about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, someone telling you that. The commissioner of the NFL is going to have his press conference in the Raiders locker room, and that Raiders locker room is going to be in Las Vegas.
Never would have believed it. Never would have believed any of it.
And Goodell mentioned that. I mean, he's like, look, one, we didn't, he saying we, speaking for the NFL, he's like, we didn't decide to legalize sports gambling. The Supreme Court did. And now it's on us to adapt. And he also said, that Vegas is not just a gambling town. It's not just a casino town. It's become a sports town and it's become an event town. And I give Vegas a lot of credit. I mean, as much as I'm like, why are we here for 8 days? It's terrifying. This is very well set up. The convention center is well set up. We've got the hotels. You've got the restaurants here. Even the teams are fairly accessible. The stadium's right there. It like the same way that Indy is great for the combine, logistically, Vegas is good for the Super Bowl.
I also think we have to acknowledge that tone changes, right? Like if 10 years ago, to your point, if you showed up to a Super Bowl party and somebody said, all right, so I've got a prop bet going on Pacheco number of carries. I got a prop bet going on overall yardage. I've got a prop bet like, you'd look at your buddy at some point and be like, do you have a problem? Who are you placing these bets with? Now, that's the way a lot of people are going to watch the Super Bowl. So society has shifted the tone, particularly on how gambling is viewed. And I think the NFL, by putting the Super Bowl here, continues to shift the tone on Las Vegas. You guys have been to enough Super Bowls. You mentioned it's a good layout. C-Rob, for you, when you think about the great Super Bowl cities, everybody has their favorites. But when you look at this, has this been a success in the way it's set up?
Well, I mean, from an entertainment value, from your ability to go and do things, in the city, gamble, eat, shows, other entertainment that's not related to the game. Yeah, I mean, it's peak. To me, it's peak. I mean, now it's been rainy every single, I'm like, this is what a London Super Bowl is going to look like.
Yeah, but Miami had good weather, but it was terrible logistics.
True. I mean, so you're trading off, LA, it's great weather in LA. Go to the beach. I mean, there are a lot of different things you can do, but logistically, yeah, it was terrible. Although it's not like the teams are really close. The team hotels are not close here, but in terms of just entertainment value, yeah.
Now, as we tape this, you guys have just come from the NFLPA Executive Director press conference. So, Jori, I mean, did you hear anything there that really stood out to you? Was there something that you were thinking, oh my gosh, with?
I think what's interesting is, and Syrup, tell me, have you ever been to an NFLPA press conference with that many members of the executive committee there? Because we had the new executive director, the president, and maybe 3 or 4 board members, which I'd only seen the president and the ED before. And I think that, first of all, they're in such an interesting time for the union because they previously came in where they're like, we need to litigate, we need to be lawyerly. And now they chose Lloyd Howell as the executive director because they need more of a business approach. They have labor peace until 2030. And so that's not what they need. They don't need to fight with the league. It's like, how can we work together to change the gambling policy? How can we try and convince them that grass isn't just good for health, it's also good for business purposes? And I think it really is a different direction. And the other thing, and then I want to hear what C-Rob thought, is we've had J.C. Tretter as the president for the last 4 years, which I think is just fascinating because he comes from Cornell, where they have a school of industrial and labor relations. So he studied how to do this in college. Now he comes, and for almost 2 years now, he's been retired in his second term, and he's living outside D.C., where the PA is located. He created this new report card system, which I know we've talked about on this podcast. And he really, I think, took that position to another level. And so seeing now, where does it go from here? What other ways do they want to elevate player voices, and what can that actually do? It's not going to be about making massive change by 2025. It's how do you start to create this momentum and ideally unite the players so that when 2030 comes around, maybe they actually have a little bit of leverage, which we really haven't seen them have in the past. Yeah, I mean, you could tell sitting there what came to mind for me. And yeah, I've seen at the Super Bowl, I've seen the larger collection. Okay. There's at least usually a few. I don't think I've ever seen the collection smaller than 4. Okay. But yeah, it was pretty, to have, what was it, 6? How many people were up there? 6, including Lloyd. 6, and then including Lloyd. You could tell sitting in that press conference that they have labor peace because I got used to so many years of going to those, and it was, okay, we're building a war chest. We're gonna have strike if we have to. Is the league gonna opt out of the CBA? Like, it was always preparing for the war. And this one, you're sitting there going, oh, now they're doing things now because they're not preparing for a war. So what they're doing is we listen to 600 questions about grass, and you're like, okay, I guess this is the war right now. It's trying to get the league to convert over to a playing surface that, league wide, that's consistent, that they feel like is safer in terms of the injuries. The new director, the animosity between DeMaurice Smith and Roger Goodell in the past really defined the union for such a long time. There's not that animosity here. Now, that might build. That always comes out of CBA negotiations, so we're not there yet. But, yeah, you can see a lot of the work that they're doing right now just to focus on the membership, focus on what the players are involved in, figure out how the gambling,
the new gambling space is going to work. I thought it was interesting when he talked about getting the 6-game suspensions lowered to 2 for players who were gambling on grounds, but not on NFL football. So like Jameson Williams, he had that 6-game suspension. It got dropped down to 2, and so he talked about just sort of drilling down on the punishment, making sure it fits the crime in the gambling space. And, it was interesting. I prefer the CBA ones, to be honest with you, because I like it when they're all talking.
Oh, you like the drama. But
yeah.
I think the punishment aspect of it is interesting because Goodell at his press conference was asked specifically about perception around these things. And we do have to be aware that even though we sit here in Vegas, as I mentioned, and it's easy to think everything's beautiful and everything's rosy, we live in a conspiracy theorist society right now. So nothing's going to change the fact that everybody believes. The fact that there are genuine people that believe an NFL script exists, which is the stupidest thing in the world. And people still want to find a way to make it find a way to believe that, I should say. We're going to learn how to talk. The league has to be more careful than ever. And I think sometimes we have to understand that over punishment is really just trying to prevent a conversation from happening about any impropriety around gambling.
Right. Their concern is about the perception rather than the integrity in the sense of it actually throwing games. And I understand, I know you could say, well, the NFLPA bartered it down so you have a less severe punishment if you bet on non-NFL, but in exchange, they had to give a more severe punishment if you bet on NFL games and particularly your own team. I think I'm okay with that. Don't bet on your own team. Don't bet on the NFL. You have inside information. Think about how many industries across this country and across the world you can't do insider trading. That is fine.
So I did think one thing about Goodell's press conference that was really interesting to me, aside from the fact I raised my hand 50 times and they wouldn't call on me.
Really? Raj, what are we doing?
Raj.
So he keeps talking about integrity of the game. I want to know, when is, what's the irreparable moment? Because now we've had players bet on NFL games, including their own.
Right.
Now,
the best is, did Calvin Ridley bet that his team would win?
It was not against, so far, we do not know of any players betting against their own interests, either personally or their team. So they're betting on themselves or they're betting on their teams, right? So is the breach, the real breach, the irreparable harm to the integrity of the game? That's going to be when one player bets against himself or against his team, right? That's it.
Right.
And you never come back from it, right? Because once it happens, a thief doesn't get caught the first time he steals, okay? So if that happens,
do you know
that's
that
it,
from
right?
personal experience?
Oh, absolutely. I stole a lot when I was a kid.
I did too, actually. I think that's, Jori, it seems like you were out there thieving.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure.
It's actually funny, though, the way you just said that, Sierra, makes me think, there's so many NFL cliches, and then when you start to actually think about what they mean, it's funny. So it's the number of times that we've all three of us have heard a guy be like, I'm willing to bet on myself. I'm willing to bet on my team. I'm willing to do that. It's it's funny that if you literally bet on yourself or your team, you're screwed. But everyone wants to be I bet on myself. I was the last pick of the draft. I tore my UCL, but I'm willing to bet on myself. I trust God and I'm betting on myself. But no, don't bet on yourself.
No, I remember when I was in college, Plaxico Burress was on Michigan State's team one time. We're all standing there talking to him, and he had a big game. I don't remember, but he's just that's what we get paid for. We were like, "You get paid?" He was like, "Oh no, I beat that." We were like, "Yeah."
But I thought it was interesting. Goodell at his press conference was asked specifically if he knew how many employees had been part of a punishment cycle. I believe his answer was he thought 25.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a pretty staggering
Hell
number.
Yeah. I was damn, that's a lot.
I give him credit for answering the question because I didn't think he would. And shout out Caitlin Caller for asking it. What I will say is the way he answered it, it was unclear to me whether 25 had been terminated, which is the most severe option, or 25 had been disciplined in some way. Maybe some warned, some terminated.
That's a fair point. But still, 25.
Some were terminated for sure.
And 25 just felt like a high number. The other thing I want y'all's thoughts on from Raj, now we're besties, his press conference was about streaming, because I thought fish
where the fish are.
He made a point to defend the playoff game being on Peacock, because look at all the value you get for $6 a month. You don't just get the game, you get all of these other things. And, that's where our audience is, and that's where our audience is going. I felt like they were tripling down on the fact that there's going to be more and more emphasis to, hey, we're going to put this on a streaming site.
They have this notion, especially Roger. He never just wants to say it for what it is. We make more money this way. We make more money. No, the Supreme Court. they changed what they were doing. So we just, hey, you know what? The Supreme Court changed. That's why we love gambling now. That's why we're here. It's bull. You're making a ton of money. You walked out and you said one day we're going to make $25 billion a year in revenue. And then COVID happened and kneeling happened and the rollback happened and there was the blip in the ratings and all the owners freaked out. How do you think he's still got to get to that number? He's going to get to it through streaming those deals. He's going to get to it through gambling, all the ancillary forms and something else that we don't know right now that's coming. He's going to, I hate that they keep saying the fans are dictating why we're changing this or this. No, you're pointing toward money. That's fine to say that.
I think Roger, too, would win some points for honesty and just coming in and saying, look, my job is to work for 32 NFL owners. By putting a game on Peacock, we got an extra $100 million for 32 NFL owners. That's not a small amount of money to be, like that. There is an emphasis of like, hey, I'm just doing my job. And if somebody's going to come offer a treasure chest of cash, I mean, you'd be dumb not to do it.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions asked at the PA press conference today was going back to the grass surfaces. And the PA was asked, do owners behind closed doors ever just admit to you like money rather than health and safety is what's dictating this decision? And Lloyd Howell, the executive director who visited all 32 teams this year, was like, look, there's not like one monolith of what the owners say. Different guys say different things, or different owners, I should say different things. But it's definitely what's dictating. And it's also why, even though Jim Irsay, the Colts team owner, believes that they should have a commissioner of football and a commissioner of business, the problem with that is that the commissioner of business would always win in the eyes of the owners who they work for. And so even though you need people to continue to support the growth of the game internationally, which, by the way, the Eagles will be hosting the Sao Paulo, Brazil game, the first game in South America for the league, and that'll be Friday night of opening weekend, which, again, we're going to have Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday football opening weekend. You think that this is not a league that's taking over, and this is a league that is concerned about player safety primarily, but all of these decisions continue to operate off the same principle, and at this point, we shouldn't be surprised.
But this is the glory of Roger Goodell. Like, the most curious thing to me, as a massive football fan, I do what I do because of my fandom. As a massive football fan, most fans just sit there and yell at Roger Goodell. But most fans in this city are not sitting there yelling at Mark Davis. At the end of the day, Roger Goodell is going to put a game in Brazil because it makes Mark Davis money. Roger Goodell is going to put games on Peacock because it makes Mark Davis money. And then he gets paid $40 million a year or whatever it is to be the scapegoat.
That's why it's set up the way it is.
Yeah, I would gladly take the punches for punch me for $40 million a year. But we're punching the wrong person.
That's what he is. He's the flakjack.
I also think it's funny when the whole protect the shield.
$40. I'll give you $40.
Yeah, I think
how hard's the punch?
On camera.
I'd take a punch on camera for $400. $40, I don't know. Like,
C-Rob's punch is probably a little harder than mine. But, I feel like Protect the Shield is very ironically fitting for Roger Goodell because protecting the shield is Roger Goodell being the shield for the owners. Like,
hey, by the way, $40 million, you could, for life, one person could come up once a day and kick me in the no-no places unannounced. Just never know where it's coming from. Just like, offer. $40 million. Yeah, that like twice a day. I'll give you twice a day, but that's the limit. That's
spit out my water.
Look. These are the things that only I think about. I just think I sat there and watched from afar because, as has been covered, Roger Goodell made it invite only. I don't know. You guys have been to a bunch of these. I don't know if you had an opinion about that one way or the other, but I watched it on TV. And I still thought he was asked a bunch of tough questions. So I don't think that there was some skating around it. But I kept watching it thinking everybody's yelling at the wrong person right now. And that's the way the system is built. Like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. All we have to do is pay attention to Roger, who's going to continue to laugh at all of us when he walks off the stage. Because at the end of the day, he did his job. He made everybody money.
I'll be careful about how I say this. And I do believe there were tough questions asked. And I don't believe that the press conference was scripted. But I will just say there was also some research done by people who work for the league beforehand, seeing if they could try and get people to give them their questions in advance. And I did not feel good about that happening.
Wait. No, I understanding that you're going to be careful.
Whether they could whether reporters could tell the general direction that were they hoping to ask Roger Goodell a question? And if so, would they be comfortable sharing the general direction?
And that is not normal. That has not been the best. Okay.
So you're trying to say, is it normal for those press conferences? Unfortunately, maybe. But is it like journalistic ethics? Absolutely not.
So last year, Super Bowl, Roger Goodell press conference, were they asking people the same thing?
I have never gotten asked that. Jori relayed that to me, and I saw it. when she relayed it, and I was disgusted. That's such a crock.
Okay.
And I don't think that they were telling those people you can't ask a question if you don't tell us, but it put a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth.
But okay,
is it their job? And again, this is not about like the individuals who are doing it because like they're doing their job.
Yeah, I don't think they were doing it on their own. They were probably directed.
Yeah, but the system and that the system thinks like, hey, we're going to make this like, okay, if you are that concerned about questions, you already made it invite only. Or you already moved it to Monday. And I actually don't think. Look, there are some issues with the invite only and certain people that should have been included. I think if you're going to make it on Monday and you can debate whether they did that, I understand why they had to cut it off somewhere because opening night is a freaking circus and you can't have all of those people trying to be at this Roger Goodell press conference. I mean, I'm thinking back to the Tom Brady Super Bowls when we're all trying to get our like actual questions in and people are like serenading him in the audience. So there is an understanding of like, there is media and there is reporters and they're not the exact same thing here this week. But don't ask about the questions.
By the way, I'll say this loudly. We're talking about this table to some extent, right? Like you guys are reporters, I'm media, and I realize that comes with different. But I think there's an understanding. I never would have had a problem with somebody saying, "Hey, you are not a journalist. You should not be at Roger Goodell's press conference." Like that makes total like for me personally. If the league came in and said, "Not you, fat Jesus," I'd be like, "I get it. Like I understand."
You're like, but my Las Vegas tattoo.
Yeah, but hello. I know that as Vegas showgirls walk by,
we're
with
on the
massive
same
headpieces.
page. We're both pro Vegas here.
I think so. I understand that part of it, but so allow me for a second to put two and two together and not put words into anybody's mouths. But I'm sitting here hearing you say you had your hand up a bunch to ask questions, right. And I'm hearing, hey, they at least tried to find the leaning of certain questions. It certainly would then make sense to just stack all of this together and say they wanted to make sure that they were protecting Goodell as much as possible by calling on certain people and by trying to move the questions in a certain direction.
And I won't. A lot of people raised their hands, right? I mean, so I'm not just going to sit here.
The league hates you, Rob. Talk to your friend Raj.
Yeah, they weren't picking me out. I'm sure there are a lot of people who raised their hands a ton of times and didn't get a question. Yeah, given that it's on the Monday, given that Jori gets asked, what's your, if you're going to ask a question,
I said the league asked reporters.
I think,
okay, it was the league asking reporters. Jori she's not putting herself in the middle of that, I guess. I still thought he got asked, tough questions.
He did.
I do think, though, that he didn't get asked about the John Gruden lawsuit. Right, which has now been pushed to the summer. I thought he would have been asked about the John Gruden lawsuit. That didn't happen.
Okay, were you there? Sorry, I'm interrupting briefly. Someone was like, "How much could we play? How much could we pay the place?" Yeah,
I was going to pay the Play 60 kid like $1,000 to ask the John.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
I even scripted it.
Yeah, tell it.
Yeah, I said he can start and then like transition into it. So you'd be like, Roger, flag football is going to be in the Olympics. John Gruden never coached flag football, but he is suing you in a Nevada court, and you are now in this state.
Yeah, that was
any thoughts?
And I'll be clear too. Like, I'm not saying the league has it out for you. I'm saying that the league, and we all know this. The league is smart enough to know there are certain people that are more likely to ask deeper questions.
He got heated. Is it fair to say he got a little heated last year? Because Jim Trotter asked the question.
Oh, yeah, someone asked the Jim Trotter question for him and even said, Roger, I know you're a man of conscience.
Yeah. Well, so, Jim Trotter.
And the look on Roger's face, by the way, when that happened, watching it on TV, was he didn't look pleased.
Well,
he can't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he should have been surprised. But I think last year he was pissy about Jim Trotter asking him about the state of the diversity in the NFL Network newsroom, pushing him on it, which Roger had asked to be pushed on it prior, hold us accountable. So Jim's like, okay, cool, I'm going to hold you accountable. And then I asked him...
He said, okay, actually no longer hold us accountable.
And then I asked him about officiating, but I think the way I phrased it, he didn't like, because Aaron Rodgers had criticized officiating. So I was like, Aaron Rodgers said this about officiating's terrible. I don't think he liked that. I think he was, pissed because he didn't want to hear about Aaron Rodgers ripping officials anymore, let alone anyone else. I do think that played a little bit into this. Plus, we're in Vegas, so he's going to get asked a million questions about the gambling. He's going to get asked about players getting suspended because it's a big deal. That was another question, though, what I wanted to ask him is, you keep talking about the integrity of the game. You've already had players literally bet on your product and the teams they play for. Where's the threshold? So I was going to ask him, is the threshold when they bet against?
Right.
their team? Like, is that it? And do you think that's irreparable damage? Like, I want to hear him answer that question because I think it's irreparable. I think once that happens forever, people will always say, well, player bet against themselves.
Like, what if a player who's already out bets on the Super Bowl this week?
No, I don't. I mean,
that's not irreparable.
I don't even.
No, I'm not saying that's the threshold. I'm saying, like, does that really need to be? Like, if you're no longer playing, do you need to be punished for it?
Should they be punished for betting on the Super Bowl? I get the 1-year suspension for players who bet on the game, but they bet for themselves. Like, you're betting for your team to win. I get that there is that's not a good look. You shouldn't be betting on it at all. It's bad. So you get a 1-year suspension, right? Like, I get that. To me, though, I think it should be spoken into existence right now by Roger. If we ever catch you betting on the product and you bet against your team, you're done. You're never walking into you're going to be banned from stadiums. Like, you're never going to be able to walk into any NFL building. Like, you're done for good. They've never said that. So I that's something I would definitely like to have addressed this.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say in fairness to them is that I imagine an element of why they were asking for questions in advance, even though I disagree with them doing it, is that is less about like the PR and more about the legality, because there are some like shaky legal waters with sports gambling, Vegas, etc.
Yeah, there are shaky legal waters, but that should be very clearly defined by now for the NFL and for Roger, right? Like,
or like Gruden stuff, like what can you do? But also, like, he's been doing this long enough that like he doesn't need that kind of help.
The Gruden stuff is going to get interesting, though, because if he continues to push this, at some point there's going to be a ton of stuff that gets unsealed and a ton of stuff that becomes very public. And I think the league, what's interesting to me is that the league can continue all day long to try and come to a settlement. If John Gruden doesn't want that settlement.
See, and that's another thing I think he needs to be asked. Would the league ever settle with John? Because Gruden's people are like, he ain't settling.
Right.
So I want to hear the league say, we're not settling. Now, he won't say that. He won't say that because they will settle. I do, I think, but that's another question I'd love to.
Yeah, I would think that the league would settle just to keep these things from being unearthed in a courtroom where
it's only going to get uglier.
We'll continue to break down everything. As we sit here in the Super Bowl, obviously there's a ton of coaching news that's happened, and when we come back, we will break down what all of that means for everybody in the NFL. We're back. We're the three best friends that anybody can have. These are all Hangover references, which is a movie.
I actually saw it once.
No way.
I don't remember when, but I've seen it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
All right, throw out the rundown of all the movies for you to have seen.
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm making a laundry list of all the.
I don't remember why, because it's not. I don't turn on movies, so I must have been somewhere where it was on, but I saw it.
Oh, it wasn't like a date.
No.
Yeah, you can't really bring.
Yeah, I don't think The Hangover is a good date movie. But we are in Vegas, so I feel like I have to make the Hangover references. I'm shooketh. Like the rest of the.
Wait, actually, I've seen it. I remember it well enough that didn't I tell you the other day when Patrick Mahomes, when the Chiefs advanced? Maybe I told C-Mac this. The Chiefs advanced the day they beat the Ravens. Patrick Mahomes tweeted out a Hangover gif, and I recognized it.
I am so. You know what? The awesome part about this is Jori right now is like a kid that snuck into a rated R movie. She's like, I have seen it. Thank you very much.
It was definite vibes of that. Was totally. Okay. We were both shocked.
Yeah, like, I mean, what? This is the most shocking thing that ever.
You want to hear a very quick, totally off-topic story on that? I remember there's once this party in high school that like most people were invited to, but like me and a couple of my friends were. Actually, you guys will love the reason, because people thought that we would tell the school that they were underage drinking.
That's on brand. That is 100% on brand.
We were going to. And so one of my friend's moms was like, I'm taking you to see an R-rated movie, just to sort of like counter the fact that we were like not trusted with this party.
Tell the truth, you would have told though, right? You totally would have.
You would have told somebody.
School.
No, but you'd have told your mom.
You would have told somebody.
Yeah, and not saying that we're different, but I did like a music study program in Chicago for a bit, and the guy in the room next to us didn't really speak any English. Really good musician, but never really like communicated with anybody. But he's super nice, and there was a language barrier, so he didn't really understand what I was asking when I asked if I could start to put a pony keg, which is like a tiny keg of beer, in his closet, and then we drilled through from his closet to our closet so that we could pump it through, and then we would just go into his room. Pump it, and that way, if the RA ever came through the hall, we didn't have they came into my hall all the time. So like, I'm over here trying to find a way to put a keg in somebody else's room that I can still drink, and you're telling your mom about underage.
I can see Brett in the background getting frustrated with these
stories. He's like, so about
so I'm going to add one because I do have one.
Yes,
My senior year of high school, I threw lived in Michigan, and it was middle winter, and parents were gone. And so I threw a party. It was supposed to be small. I ended up like basically every show. It was like 100 people show up. A bunch of friends. We cleaned the whole place up. I'm thinking I'm good. I got it, right? I completely pulled this off. Like I'm going to get away with this. And I did. Until the spring came and the snow melted. And there were like 100 beer cans that all surfaced in the snow.
But at that point, hadn't like this one, the statute of limitations expired, and two, you could have been like, I don't know, it's not like you guys have been out of town recently.
The statute of limitations on throwing a house party don't expire. And then number two,
I tried to lie and say that I was out. Oh, that must have, I don't know where that came from.
That's my sister.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Okay, so Washington.
Okay, fine. Yeah, now we'll talk about it. Calm down. All right.
Two thumbs up. That makes me want to go back to this conversation.
So Washington, speaking of guys that we want to hire, we'd want to hang out with, party with, Washington hires Kliff Kingsbury, dashingly good looking. Not sure what kind of offensive coordinator he will be, but we do know he goes to Washington only days after it was reported that he was going to the Raiders. So this was like a weird thing. So where are we? Like, what's going on with Kliff Kingsbury, first and foremost?
Wait, yeah, can you guys, because you're a big Raiders fan and you're very plugged into the Raiders, like what happened? Why did the Raiders think they were getting him?
I heard they had it all worked out and that...
and then Dan Quinn was like, stop!
No, he wanted more time on the deal. I mean, I know that's been reported multiple places, but but also I would say this, like the Raiders typically 2-year deals are not uncommon for the organization anyway. He wanted a 3-year deal if he really wanted to be there.
Time, money guarantees. That's the problem. Is that the Raiders aren't. You have a difficult time getting, especially as not a head coach. You have a particularly difficult time getting max guarantees, 3 years, 4 years. I thought he had the right to ask for it. Like if you have another suitor, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, no, I'll take the shorter deal with less money. With the potential that's not all guaranteed. Then, like offset gets into it. Like you're going to have offset language. Nobody wants offset language, which people don't know what offset language is. I'm going to pay Fitz $100 million over 10 years. But if he takes another job, whatever he makes there, I get to keep. So if you take a job making $10 million, I get to keep $10 million that I owe you. So.
There was buzz at the Senior Bowl, and I didn't report this directly, about like Russell Wilson taking the cheapest possible contract wherever he goes just to stick Denver with all of the money. But no, on the Kliff note, it's interesting because again, Sierra and I reported a piece last month about the most attractive head coach openings. And it was like, which organization would you want to work for? And anyone who listened to that episode knows we talked to different coaches and execs around the league. Washington was ranked first. And the Raiders were much further down in large part because of ownership and because of the investment. And I think that Kliff is really showing what our sources were telling us, which is that Washington's going to invest. And again, I've been hearing this with Arizona lately too, of guys being like, hey, the coaches on 2-year deals, they've got one left and they can't get that second year up already because that's not how Arizona's going to pay them. And so then if you get an offer elsewhere, like you want to leave, does Jonathan Gannon let them out because he can't give them the same offer? It matters.
All of that speaks to part of the decision-making process on who takes what job where, even as a head coach, because we only think about, well, do they have a quarterback? But are they willing to spend the money to build the right staff?
Yeah,
it's 100%. Matters a lot.
Yeah. If you have an owner and you think they're going to pinch every penny on your coordinators and the rest of your assistants, if you're a general manager and you feel like I want a larger personnel staff, I want more people out there. I don't just want area scouts. I want to have an over the top. I want to have a head of football ops. I want, all these bells and whistles. Yeah, there's, like you're not going to get that in Cincinnati. You're not going to get it with Bidwell in Arizona. Marks, everybody knows he's cash poor. Like, I mean, relative to the rest of the league, right? Yeah. So that's, and then even like technologically, like I hear this a lot from general managers about like when you always want to be at the forefront. It's like you want to review your tech every year. Like, what is there anything else out there? And are we going to add it? Like, don't worry about the cost. Are we going to add it? We got to have Zebra. We got to have, 50 million different ways to break down film. And, that's that ownership. That's part of like, if you're going to have a child, make sure that you line them up with a rich owner, like make them a Lakers, Duke, Yankees. Like, all right, we're going to pick all your teams for you up front. And I'm going to give you a gift for the rest of your life of having owners that are rich and spend money.
I love the concept of sitting down with the kid and being like, here are your options. And it's all based on cash flow and capital. Not the only reason Washington was in the news this week, though. And this is interesting and different because Ben Johnson is back with the Lions. Now, it felt like everybody thought he was going to end up with Washington. That didn't happen. But C-Rob, you tweeted a little bit about this. Like, now we're seeing all of these reports come out of that maybe he didn't interview well, and it feels, something feels off in this spot. I think everybody's stunned that Ben Johnson's back with Detroit, right? But everybody's also stunned that the Commanders, who seem to have unlimited resources, didn't end up with the coach we all thought they were going to end up with, and now it's getting ugly.
I've heard people say, well, it was going to be Dan Quinn. Why did you wait so long? Dan would have taken that job a week ago. He would have taken the job 2 weeks ago. He would have taken this the day after Dallas was out of the playoffs. He would have taken that job. That's a bunch of crap. They were absolutely locked in on Ben Johnson. You don't do what you did afterward if you weren't locked in on him. And my problem was, so I talked to a couple of different people about what exactly happened here. And from what my understanding was, Ben knew that he had reservations about the job. He talked to Dan. He talked to other people in the Lions organization. He was having a hard time, basically wanting to leave. Like, he felt like, hey, this is a great spot for me. I want to be 100% committed to wherever I go and entirely comfortable with everything, including myself, including how I will fit there with the owners.
And feel ready for the head
coach.
Feel
ready for it. Yeah. Like, he did. The way it was described to me was he wanted to feel like it was just like effortless to make the decision. And it was a lot of effort for him. And so what I heard was, when their search group or their interview group had gotten on the plane to go to talk to him, and they were going to interview Aaron Glenn as well, I don't think he meant for it to get out the way that it did, because from what I understood, they found out on the plane prior to finding out from him. Like, I don't know if they heard from an agent or if it was, I don't know exactly how it occurred, if they saw something on social media, but basically they found out from someone, he's not interviewing with you guys. Like, he's going to end up back in Detroit. So they're pissed off. They flip out about it, right? I think there's a way to handle it, and I get being upset, but you handle it privately, right? You don't go out, and what I called it was sort of like you're going to fight a proxy war, where you're going to go to these reporters, and now you're going to talk about, first it was like, oh, it's money. I remember somebody said something about money first, right? Then it was, well, he's kind of weird. He doesn't interview well. Like, he doesn't seem like he could maybe handle the job, or he's not ready for a head coaching job. It was, I mean, to me, I sat there and I'm like, this feels like the Dan Snyder Washington franchise. That's what it felt like to me. Like, you don't have to do it this way. You can be upset. That's fine. But if you're going to go out and you're going to engage reporters, I mean, to me, it felt like there was some smear into it. It wasn't just like, hey, here's what happened. It was all of a sudden, this is why. I forget the quote that I saw where it was just like, the way it was handled was like completely ridiculous or whatever. It's just like, you just don't have to do that. And if anything, I think there were people inside the Lions organization who said to Ben, yeah, you made the right decision here, because this is happening now, and that's probably going to tell you what would have happened in the future.
Yeah, I was seeing this news while I was down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and I'm on the field, and these tweets are coming through, and I'm talking to different execs, and the overriding feeling was just, okay, so Schefter comes out with this tweet, and again, he's doing his job. I believe his sources told him what he reported, but it was something along the lines of, he was never a sure lock for this job, and his asking price was ultimately too high. I think it was Schefter. Rapp had some things like this too. And to me, I always think when I'm talking to sources, what's their agenda? Because people don't talk for no reason, and they typically don't talk to just be nice. There's like 2 people in the league who are just really nice and will talk for that reason, and like the rest of them are talking for an agenda. And so the more this is coming out, rather than things just like playing out slowly, the more I'm like, well, Ben Johnson doesn't have a reason to say this. Ben Johnson's agent doesn't have a reason to say this. They're not trying to convince people he made the right decision. He wants this decision. I had multiple people who know him pretty well tell me at the Senior Bowl, like, he didn't feel ready to be a head coach yet. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a great thing. Like, so many guys get into those jobs too early. And sure, you have the Sean McVays of the world who get it really young and do a great job. But it's not a bad thing to want to get a little more development on the job. And I would, like, when people ask me, like, what's your goals? And I'm like, for me, it's not like a where I'm working or what. It's like, how do I get the best credibility to tell the best stories? How do I have the trust and the access? And I feel like if Ben Johnson feels that way, now again, did he tell them at the right time? You could debate that. But to me, I see these tweets coming out and immediately I'm thinking Washington is trying to save its reputation. And that's just embarrassing because everyone knows that the people who are talking because they have an agenda. And it's pretty clear who and what the agenda is.
Yeah. And I want to go back to something you said with that point of engaging reporters. I think it's, I'm sitting here asking you guys, sometimes when people are giving you the information, where's the line? You know what I mean? Like, because to your point, Jori, and I think it's a really smart one. When we look at rumors or when we look at information that's being leaked out, you look at who benefits from it. You probably know where it's coming from, right? But then, as a reporter, when you get engaged, to use that phrase, which I really liked, then you sort of have to parse through the BS, right? Like, or do you just, hey, this is the latest piece of information I have, so I run with it.
So Diana Rossini was a prominent reporter in this. Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport. I didn't feel like any of them crossed like a line. When I was reading it, I was like, not in terms of like they're conveying information.
And if your sources tell you that, and I think that they had good sources, they should report it.
Yeah,
that's my question.
Yeah,
I want to know what.
I want to be clear about what the content of what they reported to me as a journalist. I'm like, yeah, like you're a journalist, but also if I had been sitting there we've been there before where someone brings us information, we're sitting there looking at them like, this ain't gonna look very good for you.
Yeah.
I know you want to get this out, but are you really thinking about what this is how the layers are gonna come out and the reputation you're gonna hit when this happens? But that's not their job. That's not their job to say to whoever it is, Washington or whoever relayed the information. Hey, I'm not going to report this because it's going to ultimately, at some point, it's going to look bad for you reputationally. Now, I don't think it does in Washington. At least my mentions, they're killing me. I'm the idiot for relaying this or whatever. So I think amongst that fan base, maybe they don't care. They're like, no, it's still fine. To me, I felt like, and I could be wrong here because I've only seen the NBA from afar, but the NBA has always struck me. Ownership has always struck me as attack ownership. Always. Mark Cuban, watching some NBA owners are very overt about the way that they will go after certain issues or people they don't like. They'll engage certain reporters. NFL definitely has that. There's no doubt about it. But it was interesting to me that we've seen a reflection of ownership in Washington already in the NBA. And I wonder if there's some overlap there between how NBA owners conduct themselves and how NFL owners.
And I do think that there's a point there that we're still learning who they are as an ownership group in the NFL. Like we do need to acknowledge that.
And I think they need to realize that. Because again, kind of what you're saying, Rob, I've had times, and I can think of two in specific, one with the player and one with the team, where they told me something. It was clearly on the record. I have the audio, I have the video in one of them. And then they regretted me saying it. They weren't happy with me for reporting it. And they're like, well, why didn't you protect me? One even wanted me to issue a correction on. I'm like, well, what's the correction? Is it like, are you telling me the opposite's true? And they're like, no, but, and I'm like, well, then how am I supposed to do it? And it honestly doesn't feel great for us as a reporter because we're in a relationships business in addition to a reporting business. It's funny you say that about the NBA owner, though, because again, I spent the first 7 years of my career in Dallas where you have Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban. So I know Mark Cuban does that, but I have no sense of if that's reflective of the NBA because Jerry Jones is not reflective of other NFL owners.
By the way, she can attest to this. People, like our sources, when you talk to them, they smear people all the time. I mean, hardcore blast. Never report any of that. You never report. You're not going to let, and I don't think you would either. I would never let someone say anonymously, this specific person is, just they completely ruined this or did that or whatever. And I do see it sometimes, but there's no way.
I tell agents to their face, I'm like, yeah, you all just dislike or a stronger word than that each other. I had one of the quarterbacks who was down at the Senior Bowl. One of his agents was talking and was trying to convince me that his quarterback, who will not go in the first round, was better than quarterbacks who were there who would go in the first round. He's like, and I'm objective here. And I was like, okay, come on, insert his name. You're not objective, and you're not objective. You can give me your case. I'm asking you for your case because I told him, I'm like, look, I am not watching these practices closely, quite honestly, because my job there is to talk to my sources, not to watch the practice. And I was like, but I was hearing from other people that your guy didn't have a good day yesterday. Like, take me through what you would say about that. So I did want him to give me a side of the story. I wasn't reporting. I just wanted it for gathering. But when he says, and I can be objective here, I'm like, that's just blatantly false. You have financial interest. You have a personal interest. You have like, your job is your client is competing with other people in the zero-sum game of the NFL draft. So they all think that they're unbiased. They all think that my other favorite thing, and I can't even count how many times I heard this at last Senior Bowl and at every Senior Bowl and combine I've been to, is everyone thinks that they really cared about the guy and that everyone else is paying them off. And I'm like, the other people probably also cared about them and you're also paying them off.
That's amazing. You mentioned practice, by the way. You guys are both watching, reporting on the respective teams. So we should get to the Super Bowl here. So C-Rob, you're around at this point.
Red celebrations every time we move forward just make me want to move backward.
No, that's amazing. Any fun stories? No, I'm kidding, Brett. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. No. So you've seen practice. You've been around the team. What thoughts so far on the Chiefs?
Well, I haven't seen. We're not allowed to see.
Yeah, to be clear, there's actually pool reporters.
Right. Yeah. So, but you guys are covering the teams. For anyone that doesn't know, the pool reporters, like each team has a pool reporter that watches all of it and then writes out the notes, and it goes out to everybody. That the NFL does that very specifically to limit who's there. It's a heck of an honor for whichever person is given that assignment. But you guys get to be around the team. You get access to the team, so you get a sense of where the team sort of is. So, with that being said, C-Rob, thoughts on the Chiefs?
I'm struck that it sinks in that this is like Mahomes. Like Mahomes is just
chasing Brady.
Well, not that this experience is already just like boredom. Like this week, it's like he's been to so many AFC title games and now so many insane Super Bowls that it's just like, yeah, all right, like, this is what I do. Like, if I don't do it next year, I'll just be back here the year after. Like he just feels completely. I don't know if nonplussed is the right word, but I mean, he just it's just so normal for him now. And then when you look at like Purdy and you see some of the 49ers, the majority of that team was not in the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl that they were in. It's still a big experience for them versus the Chiefs. Like it's just, it reminds me a lot of New England, like toward the end of Brady's run there, where I mean, I remember once like Gronkowski just being like this, I'm so bored. Like just being like so bored at this, I'm at the Super Bowl and I'm so bored because I'm playing in it. And you're like, damn, that's champagne amazing problems. Right there.
It's less bored about the game and more bored about the week.
Right. Not the week or not the game, the week. They just want to get to the game. I think that's probably
like, maybe this sounds entitled, but this was my fourth Super Bowl that I've covered, the fifth one I was supposed to go to, but got COVID at the Senior Bowl, so I had to miss it. But I do think there is a sense of just like, it's a different experience when you come back. And for me too, I'm like, okay, first times it's like the concerts and this and that. And I was glad about, and maybe this is just me being a lame human being, but like I was glad, but even also because I like had source building opportunities the first times. And now I'm like, okay, we got the stories, we got the game. You're just shaming me. Okay, I'm gonna.
No, we're not shit. But I
do think it changes over time, and I also think in some ways it just becomes less overwhelming. Like opening night, I'm not saying it's not a circus, but I actually am like, no, opening night can be super valuable. You just gotta stay away from the podiums. Like I talked to multiple I think I talked to 3 different Niners assistant coaches, maybe 3 or 4 players who weren't up at the podium. Like that was really valuable. And kind of similarly at the team hotels, it's just like, no, get your question in. It's annoying that people are asking questions that have nothing to do with it, but also like they could be annoyed that we're doing our job this way. So I do get it. But I mean, it is crazy because I think Mahomes is just doing this at a level that's like so rare. And when you're saying like we could be back next year, you have so many guys who are saying, like, look, Trent Williams has been in the league, 14 years, something. This is his first time. It's hard to get here. It is if you're anyone but Patrick Mahomes, because it doesn't matter if Tyreek Hill isn't on the team anymore. It doesn't matter if you lose Eric Bieniemy. It doesn't matter. If he's there, they're always going to be in it.
That's the interesting thing, too, that she brings up, like about Trent Williams. Even for veterans who've been around the block forever, this is still a big first experience for them. You can be 35 and have been in the league forever and be an all-pro and all these different things. But it's still this huge experience, which I do think it does somewhat impact the psyche of players versus the ones who have been here a multitude of times, who the moment's not too big for them. I think the whole thing about how many Super Bowls had Montana been in when he pointed out John Candy in the crowd, right? Like that, it was like his 3rd Super Bowl or whatever. It might have been his 4th Super Bowl he played in.
I'm not sure, but yeah.
But I mean, I to me, I'm like that. moment in the huddle happens, you're literally about to put on a game-winning drive against the Bengals to win this game, and you point out John Candy in the crowd, and like the guys in the huddle are like, "Whoa, this dude really is like totally cool in the moment." But I don't think that happens his first Super Bowl. I think he's probably sitting there like, "Oh my God,
And that it gets interesting with Brock. And I know you've been around and working a lot on this, but like, I think it's fair to say in the playoffs that there have been some slow starts in games to him and some great finishes. So you got to wonder, for somebody that is like, he's not Mahomes. He hasn't been here 100 times. So you have to wonder how all of that plays into the 49ers. I mean, you've been around everybody that knows Brock. What are sort of your sense with him?
Yeah, what's fun about these stories, and Sierra and I joke about this, is our editors are like, so what are you writing today? What's your angle? And I'm like, I don't know. What are they going to say? And then I'll figure out my angle. But I think that for me, I thought I was writing this story about Brock, and then I thought it was okay, Brock and what Kyle Shanahan wants, and then it turned into like, is Brock actually a game manager and a system quarterback, and what do those even mean? Like, define the terms. And I think what's interesting from the 49ers perspective is that they view it as, if he's a system quarterback for the Shanahan system, that's almost like a badge of honor, not a ditch. I feel like, C-Rob, you've talked about just the demands of playing for a coach like Kyle Shanahan and how they are legitimately higher than other coaches. And again, I haven't played for any of them, so I can't say that. But like, to them, they're saying like, oh, you think he's just running the system? Well, actually, Kyle is throwing just a ton of things at you at all times. And you have to, in no time, diagnose it all, get your guys lined up, understand the defense, and still make the throw, and also not get like not have the pressure beat you down.
And another thing too about Purdy, and it took me talking to someone else about. So when Kirk Cousins had his season-ending injury, I was talking to somebody close to Kirk, and he was like, part of the reason why this was so devastating for Kevin O'Connell was because the Shanahan offense it's not easy to learn. It's difficult to learn. And he told me, he said, Kirk finally got comfortable in his second year. That's why he was playing at such a high level, because the Shanahan offense, it's like predicated. You go to the line of scrimmage, you got to have 3 plays in your back pocket, right?
Right.
And that first year, you're pretty much going up there with like 1, like maybe 2. Like, I think I got it. You're, maybe your wristband in it, whatever. And so when it clicked for Kirk, you saw that jump. And so for Purdy, it seems like he's gotten to master it pretty quickly. And think about how long Kirk been in the league, and it really took him 2 years to get fully versed in Shanahan's system, which is what they run him in.
And there's a situational awareness too. I got Brock one-on-one for a little bit yesterday, and he was talking to me about, he's like, look, I go up to the line of scrimmage, there's 2 plays. Now, I usually don't have more than 8 seconds left on the play clock because Kyle's been talking to me all this time. Well, now they were in the game against the Packers, and Juszczyk is saying like, hey, you tight end over here, motion. And Brock realizes, no, actually, we have 2 seconds left on the play clock. If he motions, even though that is what was meant to happen in the play and to flip the formation, well, then they got a delay of game. And so he has to be aware of that at all times. And so I think that when the 49ers were saying like Brock is a very aggressive quarterback, that might be like, well, what if he's not airing it deep all the time, which he has done at times. And it's like, for him, aggressive is being aggressively able to make the decisions that Kyle wants to, and that will best allow his teammates to succeed. And the last thing I'll say on that is that at first, when I talked to his quarterbacks coach, Brian Greasy, and also assistant quarterbacks coach, Clay Kubiak. And the way they were talking at first, I was kind of like, this sounds a little cliche. And then I started to think, like, we asked them, what does Kyle want in a quarterback? And they said, Kyle wants a quarterback who can get a ton of information thrown at him at once, process it, and not be slowed down by it. And it's true. Like, it sounds cliche, but he is doing it in a way that some other coaches don't require. And I mean, you see that on defenses too. Some defenses are like, no, we just want to attack and make it as simple. And others want to get fancy with their blitzes, et cetera. And so I think that this is a legitimate difference between teams, even at the highest level.
Yeah, to me, all of that, by the way, speaks to, as much as we want to sit here and say, is he a system quarterback? Is he a game manager? If he's a system quarterback in a system where it works and he's managing the game for somebody that wants it, like,
it's hard to do.
But like, who cares if that's what, like, if that's what it,
so we make it. Who cares? I think it's a compliment. Right, that's what I wrote.
Right. I think that there's this element of, okay, cool, you got the right system quarterback for the right system.
Okay, so when you watched him play, I mean, there have been moments where he goes off script. He had leads a game-winning drive. Didn't play well. Leads a game-winning drive in the divisional round, right? And he rips off like a 9-yard run at the end of that, right? It's completely off script. I'm like, the game managing? Like, was that a game managing play? Like, so what do we call him then? oh, he did that, but everything else is game manager. This is so stupid. Like
Right.
it really is just a dumb. It's like the derogative remark that we make about quarterbacks who we think are limited. That's just our way of saying he's limited.
And
Patrick Mahomes isn't limited. Josh Allen isn't limited. But Kirk is limited. Brock is limited. Like, come on.
the other thing I loved is I was talking to a center yesterday, and he's like, when you look at the past 2 games, second half comebacks, we're going out and we're trusting Brock to bring us back in the second half. He's like, you can't ask that of every quarterback. This is not a first round quarterback with the tangibles. He's not the biggest guy. He's not got the strongest arm. Like, this is a guy who actually doesn't have those measurements and is still able to do it because he starts with his awareness. He makes the decisions, and then he relies on his athleticism as the backup. All
that matters is, do the 49ers have their quarterback for the next X amount of years? And the answer to me, the answer to that is quite simply yes. That's all that matters. Final, any prediction for the game?
So I think it's going to be whatever Mahomes and Kelsey can do or can't do is going to make this game. Like, I feel like I was talking to somebody of the 49ers, and I was like, why don't you just go to Fred and be like, Fred, that's your guy.
Yeah,
the whole
that's
game.
smart.
Don't worry about tackling running backs. Don't worry about anything. Stick with him. If he blocks you at the line of scrimmage, stick with him at the line of scrimmage. Like, if that is your guy, that is your only assignment. You're his shadow. You're his spy. Don't worry about any other thing that happens in the game. And I think that would dramatically impact how Kansas City plays. Now, he said, all right, so then Pat rips off 3 runs in the first quarter. Now what do we do? I was like, well, you're screwed. Because he's like, that's what would happen. He said, you take away Travis, and he said, Pat's going to pick up on it. After one series, I see what they're doing. They're spying them with their best defensive player. All right, I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to run a few times. And Fred Warner's going to lose his mind because he's going to be like, no, I got, like that. I can't play this way. You just have to. I think it's going to be what Kelsey and Mahomes do or don't do together. To me, I think it's going to dictate how this game goes.
Yeah, which is why after attending the Chiefs' last 2 playoff games, I went 27-24 Kansas City, because I do think the Niners are like a better team if you take like everyone in as a whole. But those 2 guys, they've been there before. They understand how to do it at the highest level, and they're firing.
Yeah, I said to somebody earlier this week, when we have this Brady v. Mahomes conversation that I hate, like, I just want 2 individuals to be great and be respected for their greatness. Like, Brady, if you made any mistake, he made you pay, right? We all know that. I think what we forget about Mahomes is that he makes you make mistakes. And that's the difference. Like, he's not waiting for you to make a mistake. He's creating the mistake you're going to make. And I can't bet against that. As much as I think the 49ers are a better football team, I think the Chiefs win this game, because I don't know how you stop.
And that's the difficulty of this game, is because clearly the 49ers have the better roster overall, top to bottom.
I don't think the best team always wins, because this isn't 4 out of 7.
Right. But that's what I'm, then clearly the other team has an alien. Like, the guy is just, he can't, there's no other, like, he's just, nothing else on the planet is like that guy. And like, how do you weigh those 2 against each other in a game like this?
Yeah,
it's so difficult.
That's why I'm all in on the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl in Allegiant, which is weird to say. Remember, they've never lost in Allegiant. They've never. They are undefeated.
But they did lose to your Raiders this year.
Yeah, they did, but that was at Arrowhead, so they're undefeated at Allegiant. So
is he going to catch Brady? You think he'll catch Brady?
I think
that's 3 Super Bowls in 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said earlier is true. Like, I believe every year that they have Andy Reid and they have Patrick Mahomes, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. They have clearly at this point the best coach in the NFL and the best quarterback in the NFL are playing together, and they're in Kansas City. This is Brady Belichick all over again.
Do you think Andy Reid's that much better a coach than Kyle Shanahan?
I think Andy Reid has shown the ability to be so flexible in what he does. Like, think about this. Isaiah Pacheco, every game in the playoffs, has hit the over on rushing attempts, not just yardage, but also attempts. So what's happened over the course of the last 2 months is that they've become more committed to running the football because they had to be committed to it, right? So when we think about great coaches, to me, what was beautiful about the Patriots dynasty, love or hate them, is that one year they're spread out as an offense. The next year they're running the football. The next year they're running with their defense. Like, Andy Reid is doing that within one season. So it's not that it's not that Kyle Shanahan isn't a great coach. It's that I think we've seen more flexibility in, hey, this is what we got to do to win. This is how we're going to do it. That's what Andy Reid does. So that's why I'm all in on Andy Reid.
I don't know if he's that much better of a coach. They're both unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be unbelievable all stinking week. You should be checking out Yahoo Sports app, by the way. We've got some great content coming out for you. A ton of interviews with everybody that's at Radio Row, and they're both around the team doing great content too. So we're out there. Plus, Thursday back with Zero Blitz will become another live show. We're going to be hanging out with Frank Schwab. We'll be doing that thing. You can follow us on Twitter at Charles Robinson, at Jori Epstein, at Jason Fitz. I'm going to learn to speak. Follow Stone at SJ Rochelle on Twitter, Brett at Brett Rader. Follow him particularly because he's had to deal with the horse we just gave him for the last hour, and I think the whole time he's just sitting there frustrated.
I like it. It's like the old days when I used to just Trez and I used to piss him off. It was great.
This is fun. All of us in person. We should do it. Like maybe weekly. We do the show at your place. Just come over to the house.
Why are we going down to him? We live in the same area.
Well, because of that means like he's got to be the host and like going to make dinner and like we do the whole show.
He is a great cook.
Really? See.
Oh, you should see that stuff. It's insane.
All right.
And he'll send us the step-by-step videos. This was before you were here. It's not leaving you out.
Speaking of Therese, by the way, remind everybody how they can help support his amazing legacy.
Check out breakingtea.com/Therese for the All Juice tee or hoodie. Remember that proceeds from that purchase go to support the Therese Paler Scholarship at Howard University. You can also contribute to that directly as well as the scholarship in his name at Mizzou if you check out the podcast.
All right, leave us that 5-star review, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, your family, tell your enemies, tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. Presuming we make it through this whole Vegas experiment, I don't know if my liver will, but we'll try to be back next Wednesday with more inside coverage.
I'm Jason Fitz.
I'm Jason Fitz.